Chapter 1 $6 and 3 Brides. The noon sun beat down on the crooked wooden buildings of Dry Creek, baking the dust into hard-packed clay. Horses stood tethered outside the saloon, tails swishing at flies, while the townsfolk pressed shoulder to shoulder near the gallows platform. But there was no hanging today. Today, something uglier was on display. 3 Apache women stood barefoot on the planks, their wrists bound with coarse rope. Their dark eyes scanned the jeering crowd with a quiet fire that not even chains could snuff out. A drunk ranch hand shouted, "Ain't worth feed a dog," and the crowd laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. Samuel Carter pushed through the onlookers, spurs clinking against the boards. His broad frame carried the wear of too many hard winters, and his face was weathered, lined with grief. He tipped his hat lower against the sun, but whispers followed him all the same. "Widow Carter," they muttered. "Fool of a man," they said. His 2 little ones waited at home with nothing but cold bread and an empty hearth. The auctioneer slapped the side of the platform with his hand. 3 Apache women, strong enough for work. Who'll start the bid? Silence, save for the shuffle of boots and the creak of leather. Nobody wanted them, not as wives, not as help, not as neighbors. Samuel's jaw clenched. He saw his daughter's tear-streaked face that morning, clutching a rag doll, whispering, "Pa, I'm cold." He saw his son's empty plate. $6, Samuel said, voice rough as gravel. The crowd broke into laughter. A saloon girl covered her smile with a gloved hand. $6, someone hooted. "Why not throw in a sack of beans while you're at it?" Samuel's hand didn't tremble as he pulled the bills from his vest. 6 crumpled dollars, nearly all he had left. He held them out like a man offering his last breath. The auctioneer smirked, spat into the dust, and shrugged. Sold. $6 for the 3. A hush rippled through the crowd as Samuel stepped forward. He cut the ropes with his own knife, the blade flashing in the sun. For the first time, the women's eyes met his up close. Defiance in the eldest, Naira, weary sorrow in Tala, and wary curiosity in the youngest, a pony. Samuel tipped his hat, voice low, almost ashamed. "You'll come with me? My children, they need a mother's hand." No one answered. The women simply stepped down from the platform, their movements dignified despite bare, bruised feet. The crowd parted, staring as Samuel led them through the dust toward his waiting wagon. Behind them, laughter still echoed from the saloon, but Samuel didn't hear it anymore. All he heard was the creak of the wagon wheels, the whisper of the prairie wind, and the weight of $6 heavier than any gold. Chapter 2 A Home of Dust and Silence. The Carter Ranch sat on the edge of the prairie, a lonely sprawl of weathered boards and sagging fences. The wind whistled through cracks in the barn walls, carrying the smell of hay and the faint cry of a coyote from somewhere beyond the hills. Samuel guided the wagon up the rutted path, the wheels groaning with each turn. The 3 women sat in silence behind him, eyes unreadable, their backs straight despite the jolting ride. When the wagon stopped, 2 small figures burst out from the doorway of the house. Little Sarah clutched a rag doll to her chest, curls wild from the wind, while Tommy, barely 7, clung to his sister's hand. Their eyes widened at the sight of the women. "Pa!" Sarah whispered. "Who are they?" Samuel swung down from the wagon and cleared his throat, the word sticking. They'll be staying here, helping us." He didn't dare say more, not yet. The women climbed down. Tala knelt in the dirt without a word, running her hand over Tommy's cheek, and for the first time the boy didn't flinch. Sarah hid behind Samuel's leg, watching. Inside, the house smelled of smoke and stale bread. The hearth was cold. Samuel set his hat on the hook, suddenly ashamed of the bare table, the broken chair leg propped up with a block of wood. The eldest, Naira, walked straight to the fireplace, her dark braid swaying. She squatted low, ran her fingers through the ash, and without asking began stacking kindling. Soon, sparks leapt from flint and flames licked up the chimney. Samuel stood with his arms crossed, torn between gratitude and unease. They don't belong here, he thought. Yet when the fire caught and warmth spread to the cabin, he saw Sarah inch closer, drawn to Naira's calm presence. Tala busied herself at the table, rearranging the few dishes, humming something soft in her own tongue. Apache, the youngest, disappeared outside, and minutes later returned with a bucket full from the well, water dripping down her arms. "Pa!" Tommy whispered, tugging Samuel's sleeve. "They ain't bad." Samuel's throat tightened. He turned to the window, staring out at the dead grass swaying in the twilight. The ranch needed strong hands. The children needed gentle ones. And here stood 3 women, strangers, prisoners of circumstance, doing what he could not. Later, as the children slept curled beneath patched quilts, Samuel sat by the fire, hat in his lap. Across from him, Naira's gaze caught his. No words passed between them, but something unspoken filled the silence. Suspicion, sorrow, and a fragile thread of understanding. Outside, the prairie wind howled against the shutters, but for the first time in a long while, Samuel's house felt alive. Chapter 3. Whispers by the Firelight. The days stretched long on the Carter Ranch. Mornings began with the crack of the rooster's cry, the smell of dust and leather in the air, and the weight of chores that never ended. Samuel rose before dawn, pulling on his boots while the women stirred quietly in the dim glow of a lantern. He expected silence, distance, but slowly something else began to take root. It started small. Sarah sat on the porch steps one morning, hair tangled from the night's restless sleep. Naira, the eldest, came to her with a brush carved from bone. Without asking, she knelt and began to braid the girl's hair into neat plaits, weaving little strands as though she'd done it for years. Sarah's wide eyes softened, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Samuel, watching from the corral, felt a strange tightness in his chest. Tala's gift revealed itself at night, when the little ones tossed in their quilts, whimpering from nightmares. She sang. The words were Apache, low and lilting, carrying the rise and fall of wind over the mesas. Though the children did not understand the language, they settled, their breaths evening out as if soothed by some ancient lullaby. Samuel found himself standing in the hallway, leaning against the doorframe, letting that soft melody wash over him too. A pony spent her hours with the horses. At first, Samuel bristled, afraid she'd spook them, but he watched as she laid a gentle palm against the neck of his bay, gelding, whispering in a voice like rustling leaves. The animal, often stubborn with Samuel himself, lowered its head as if bowing to her. The sight unsettled him, and yet he could not look away. That evening, after the children had gone to sleep, the fire crackled low on the hearth. Samuel sat at the table, hat in his hands, the lamplight casting shadows across his face. The women sat nearby, speaking quietly in their own tongue. He caught fragments, a word here, a laugh there, but mostly the soft rise and fall of voices that filled the cabin with life. Finally, Naira turned, her eyes catching the firelight. "Why?" she asked, her English thick but steady. "Why buy us?" The question hung heavy. Samuel rubbed a hand across his jaw, searching for words. "My children," he said at last, voice rough. They needed someone. I had no one left." Silence followed. Then Naira gave the smallest of nods. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, only acknowledgement. But it was enough. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Samuel looked at their faces, tired, proud, unbroken, and felt a dangerous stirring inside him. He had bought them out of desperation, but here, by the firelight, he began to see them as more than what $6 had bought. They were women of strength, of story, of heart, and against his will, Samuel Carter began to wonder if his heart was still capable of beating for someone again. Chapter 4, Blood on the Horizon. The sun dipped low, bleeding crimson across the horizon, as Samuel tied his horse outside the Dry Creek saloon. He needed flour and nails, and maybe a word about the cattle market. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and sour whiskey. Piano keys clanged off tune, spurs clinked across the warped floorboards, and laughter spilled like broken glass. As soon as Samuel stepped through the swinging doors, the chatter dimmed, heads turned. A group of ranch hands hunched over a card table near the back, their smirks sharp as knives. One of them, Clay Harlan, broad-shouldered and mean-eyed, slammed his whiskey glass down. "Well, if it ain't Carter," Clay drawled, voice dripping with mockery. "Heard you been keeping a house full of squaws. Thought your dead wife would have taught you better." Laughter erupted. Samuel kept his hat low, walking to the bar. "Just need supplies, Clay. Don't want trouble." But trouble found him anyway. Clay pushed away from the table, boots thudding on the creaky floorboards. $6 for 3 squaws. You call that wives? Or livestock? He spat the word like poison. Samuel's jaw tightened. He turned, meeting Clay's eyes. "They're under my roof, my care. That's all you need to know." The saloon fell silent, tension thick as smoke. Then Clay's fist flew. Samuel staggered back against the bar, whiskey bottles rattling. Instinct took over. He swung hard, fist connecting with Clay's jaw. The room exploded. Chairs toppled, glasses shattered, and men surged forward, hungry for a fight. Samuel fought like a cornered wolf, but the odds were against him. Boots slammed into his ribs, fists split his lip, and the taste of blood filled his mouth. He staggered into the street, thrown through the swinging doors like a rag doll. Dust rose around him as Clay and his gang followed, guns glinting in the dying light. "Should have left you to rot with your squaws," Clay sneered, cocking his revolver. Hoofbeats thundered. From the shadows of the prairie road came 3 riders, skirts whipping the wind, rifles strapped across their backs. Naira, Tala, and a pony rode hard into town, eyes blazing like fire under the rising moon. The crowd scattered as the women dismounted in a storm of dust. Naira leveled her rifle, her voice cutting through the night. "Step back." Clay froze. Few men in Dry Creek had ever seen Apache women ride like warriors, hair streaming, rifles steady as stone. Tala stood by Samuel, helping him to his feet, while a pony took the horse reins with one hand, shotgun in the other. "You ain't welcome here," Naira said, eyes never leaving Clay. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Clay cursed under his breath, spat in the dirt, and holstered his gun. His men followed, muttering, slinking back into the saloon. Samuel swayed on his feet, blood dripping from his lip. He looked at the 3 women. These women he had bought for 6 crumpled dollars, and something inside him shifted. Not pity, not shame, respect. The prairie wind howled down Main Street, carrying with it a truth the whole town had just witnessed. The Carter Ranch was no longer just Samuel's burden. It was a fortress built on unexpected strength. Chapter 5, The Unexpected Claim of the Heart. The prairie sun rose slow and golden, painting the Carter Ranch in a wash of light. Samuel sat on the porch, ribs bandaged tight, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. Every breath hurt, but worse than the pain was the silence of his thoughts. Echoes of Clay's words, the sting of fists, and the memory of 3 women riding to his rescue like storm winds out of the desert. From the barn came the soft murmur of voices. Naira's tone was low, steady, while a pony's laughter, light as a stream over rocks, carried into the morning air. Tala emerged with a basket of eggs, skirts brushing the grass. She paused when she saw him, her dark eyes unreadable, before setting the basket on the porch beside him. "You bleed less today," she said simply, her English careful, almost shy. Samuel managed a faint smile. "Reckon I do." He watched as Sarah darted out, her hair in neat braids, Tommy chasing after her with a wooden stick for a sword. The children were laughing, really laughing, chasing each other across the yard, while Naira watched from the doorway. The sound struck Samuel harder than any blow had. "You've given them more than I ever could," he admitted, voice hoarse. Naira's gaze met his. Strong, steady, carrying the weight of someone who had buried too many dreams. "We gave them what we had," she said. "Songs, care love." She hesitated, then added, "We did not come here by choice. But still they're ours now, too." The words cut through him. Samuel swallowed hard, setting down his coffee. "When I paid that money, I thought only of survival. I never asked what you wanted, never asked what you needed, and still you saved my life." Tala folded her arms, watching him carefully. "We are not cattle, not wives you bought." Her voice trembled like a bowstring drawn tight. "But family, that can grow if we choose." Samuel looked at each of them in turn, Naira, with her quiet fire, Tala, with her strength hidden under song, a pony, still laughing with the children, hair wild in the sun. His chest ached, not from broken ribs, but from something deeper, something he had long thought buried with his wife. He rose slowly, every movement stiff, and stood before them. "I don't ask for forgiveness, or for love, but if you'll have it, this ranch, my name, my heart, it belongs to you as much as it does to my children." For a long moment, the wind carried only the rustle of grass, the distant cry of a hawk. Then Naira stepped forward, laying a hand over his chest, just above the bandages. Her touch was steady, grounding. "In time," she said softly. "Maybe it wasn't a promise, but it was enough." Behind them, the children's laughter rang out, mingling with the whistle of the prairie wind. For the first time in years, Samuel Carter felt the weight on his shoulders ease. Not gone, but shared. The $6 he had spent now felt like the smallest price in the world. Chapter 6. A New Dawn over Dry Creek. The months rolled on, and the Carter Ranch changed with them. Where once the fences sagged and the barn leaned weary into the wind, now the boards stood straight. The corrals held strong, and the pastures breathed with the life of cattle once thought too weak to last the winter. Each day began with the smell of fresh bread from the hearth, the chatter of children's voices, and the hum of Apache songs rising with the morning sun. Samuel rode the pastures at dawn, his ribs long healed, though the scars still ached when storms gathered on the horizon. From the saddle, he watched Sarah run barefoot through grass, her braids swinging, Tommy chasing after her with the pony's laughter trailing behind them. The children no longer clung to silence or hunger. They were thriving, their voices alive against the endless sky. In the evenings, when the work was done and the cattle bedded, the porch filled with warmth. Naira sat weaving leather into belts, her steady hands teaching Sarah each knot. Tala hummed over a pot of stew, her songs mingling with the smell of mesquite smoke. A pony brushed down the horses, whispering to them in that quiet tongue, before joining the family's circle beneath the setting sun. The town still whispered. When Samuel rode into Dry Creek, he felt the eyes on his back. Carter and his squaw wives, some muttered. But the jeers grew quieter with each passing week, replaced with wary respect. Men had seen the Apache women stand in the street with rifles, had seen them nurse children and men a ranch until it stood tall again. Respect in the West was rarely given. It was earned, and together they had earned it. One evening, as the sky burned orange and purple, Samuel leaned against the porch rail, hat in his hands. The women sat near the fire, the children asleep inside. He cleared his throat, voice rough with the weight of unspoken things. "I thought I'd lost everything when my wife passed," he said quietly. "This land, my children, even myself. But you three, you brought something back I thought was gone." The flames crackled. Naira looked up, her dark eyes steady, unreadable. "You did not buy love, Samuel Carter," she said, "but you gave us a place. And from that, love can grow." He bowed his head, humbled, "Then let it grow. I don't care what the town calls it. All I care is this. When the sun rises, I want to face it with you all by my side." Silence fell, soft as a blanket. Then Tala smiled faintly, her hand brushing his as she passed him a bowl of stew. A pony laughed low, teasing. "Then you'll need more land, Samuel. Children will run wild here soon enough." The prairie wind carried their laughter into the night, past the fences, past the hills, into the wide open west. Dry Creek would remember Samuel Carter's $6 purchase as a scandal, a curiosity. But in truth, it had become something no price could ever measure, a family bound by firelight, hardship, and love beneath the endless sky. And when dawn broke over Dry Creek the next morning, it was not a lonely man's ranch that stood against the horizon. It was a home. The sun sank low, spilling fire across the endless plains. The Carter Ranch stood proud against the glow, fences mended, cattle grazing, smoke curling from the chimney. From somewhere down the valley drifted the faint twang of a saloon fiddle, carried on the dry wind mingled with the scent of sagebrush. Samuel leaned against the porch rail, hat in hand, watching Sarah and Tommy chase each other through the tall grass. Their laughter rose like birds into the sky, brighter than he'd ever heard before. Behind him, the door creaked open. Naira stepped out, her braid glinting bronze in the dying light. Tala and a pony close behind. For a moment, the four of them stood in silence, the horizon burning before them. Samuel's chest tightened, the words he carried too long finally pushing through. "I thought I bought survival with $6, he said, voice rough as a prairie wind. "But what I found was something worth more than all the gold in the West." Naira's gaze softened, steady as the earth beneath them. She placed her hand over his, strong and sure. "You did not buy us, Samuel. We chose to stay." The wind hushed, the sky bled into twilight, and Samuel drew them close, the children's laughter echoing like a promise. The journey had been carved from dust and danger, but now, as the stars blinked awake above Dry Creek, it ended in something greater: love, family, and the quiet triumph of a home built where no one believed it could stand.